I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Environment. Each week it's my privilege to bring guests that teach all of us about our environment, how important it is, and how we should enjoy it, appreciate it, and pass it on to future generations. This is a show I'm going to watch. It's about Alaska. It's about two very special people who had a very special experience in Alaska very recently. You've met them both before. Everybody knows Dick Campbell. Everybody in Oshkosh, he's a historian. Before that, he was the CEO of the YMCA. He believes in service. He believes in doing what he can to make the people around him appreciate all the more the opportunities that they have. Well, he's got a daughter, Susan Campbell, that didn't fall very far from the tree. I had the treat about a year and a half ago of having a program with her where she and a few friends took a 1,000-mile hike in the wilderness without a gun and lived, learned, did so much and came back very, very healthy. Well, she's got a story to tell you that you can share. Not only that, you can do it. Susan, welcome to the show.
Hi, George. Hi.
How did this trip come about?
Well, last June of 2014, I came to Oshkosh for my brother's wedding, and I brought my dad this book, the Alaska Milepost, and I gave it to him for Father's Day. And the Milepost is a mile-by-mile record of the whole Alaska highway, where to stay, where to go. And Dad has been to Alaska many times, but he'd never driven the Alaska highway. And I said we could do that. And I just recently retired in June from 33 years of teaching elementary school. And so I had the time to do it. And so we started talking about the possibility of making this trip. And we read the milepost and looked at maps, and we had plan A, B, C, D. I think we ended up on plan E of how to do this, and we just set out on paper trying to plan this road and ferry trip to see Alaska, learn about the Alaska Highway, the history of building the Alaska Highway, and also the Klondike Gold Rush, which are two things that my dad knows a lot about, and he's done history talks. So he wanted to go and see the real places, and I said we could, and he wasn't so sure we could do that. And I said, well, I think we can do it, and we did it.
Well, give us an idea of how big a project this is. Alaska's big.
Alaska's really big, and so this trip, for us, Fairbanks in a huge loop through Canada and back to Fairbanks was 4,088 driving miles and over 1,000 miles on the Alaska ferry system. And that's only part of Alaska and Canada. So we did a lot of road miles, and as you know, a lot of Alaska is not covered by roads, but we were road travelers for this trip. And that's why, like you said, anybody could do a trip like this. And we planned it, and we stayed in guest houses and hotels and motels, and we didn't camp, but that was okay. And that's why the milepost was really helpful. So we made it happen, and we learned a lot of history.
What kind of information will people find if they buy their own milepost?
If you bought a milepost, you could go mile by mile, every tenth of a mile, what is on the road, where the mile markers are, historical markers, restaurants, gas stations, parks, any amenity that you would need or want on the road. And it's in the milepost, and it's revised every year and updated, and it's a great Alaska travel planner.
You took your car?
My car, my 2003 Subaru Forester, and it turned over 100,000 miles on the trip. We had to take a picture of the odometer when that happened. We had zero problems with the car. We never had a flat tire in over 4,000 miles of driving. We never had any car problems, and it was awesome.
What did you pack?
Okay, we each had a tub that I labeled Dad's stuff and Susan's stuff, and we put all our stuff in there. We didn't take too much. We had some clothing, rain gear, shoes. I had some, if we wanted to cook out, or we had making a fire, or some cook pots, a little stove and things, some emergency equipment, but we didn't really take too much stuff. We didn't really need it because we were staying in hotels along the way.
Okay, let's start the trip.
Okay, we left Fairbanks at the end of August, and we had already planned it out, and Dad made a spreadsheet. We kind of averaged, you know, we didn't want to spend every day just driving all day because we were going to stop. So we went Fairbanks to Whitehorse and stayed overnight, and then we went Whitehorse to Skagway and stayed a few days in Skagway and saw all the historical sites for the Klondike Gold Rush. Then we took the Alaska Marine Highway from Skagway all the way to Prince Rupert in British Columbia. And you can put your car on the ferry, and the milepost let us know about those schedules and how to do that. And then from Prince Rupert, we drove all the way over to Prince George and back up to Dawson City, stopping many days along the way. We went over the top of the World Highway after following that whole Alaska Highway. After top of the World Highway, coming back into Alaska, we went back down to Valdez because Dad had never been there. We took a ferry over to Whittier and went through the tunnel over to Anchorage, then drove down to the Kenai Peninsula, visited and some friends, and then drove back up the Parks Highway through Denali Park and back to Fairbanks. So that was our route.
21 days.
21 days on the road and 3 days on the Alaska Marine Highway ferry.
What a variety of geography you would see. Just for example, people who haven't been there are in awe of the ocean. How much water do we have in Alaska?
Oh, Alaska has, I should look that up. I'm not sure how many miles, but we have thousands of miles of coastline. And the Alaska Marine Highway system connects all the villages in southeast Alaska, which are not connected by roads. That's the only way you can travel to them. And many people come to Alaska on a cruise ship, but the Alaska Marine Highway system, they are state-run ferries that you can put your boat on, and they have very nice accommodations with cabins and their cafeteria and wonderful, huge ferries to travel on. So, and you see whales and wildlife. We saw sea otters, and you pass by glaciers dumping into the ocean. So you do see wilderness.
And Alaska has railroads. Take a minute for those.
We have, when we went to Skagway, there is the historic White Pass Railroad that was built during the gold rush, originally, where the miners went over, and we took that train up and over White Pass and into Canada, and you can actually see parts of the old trail from the 1800s, and that was really fun. You can go stand out on the back of the train, and it's a steam engine. Yeah, so that was
And
fun.
you could take trains from Fairbanks down through the park, down to Anchorage, out to Kenai, to Whittier. There are other train opportunities through wonderful scenery, good food.
Good food, and the trains, yes, you can go from Seward, Anchorage, all the way up to Fairbanks and back, and that's another way you can see a big chunk of Alaska on your own. Yeah.
And what kind of food and other amenities are on the on the ferry, on the inside passage?
Oh, they have a nice cafeteria, a big menu, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's a bar on all the ferries. You can bring your own food if you want, but yeah, we ate in the cafeteria every day, just nice restaurant type food, and that was fun. And we would eat in cafes along the way when we were on the road, and in all the little mom and pop kind of restaurants along the way, and that was fun because you meet a lot of characters in those kind of places, which we did. Yeah.
Well, you brought one of them along with you.
I did, my dad. Yeah.
But we're going to take our first break and let our audience meet him firsthand.
Oh, good. Good. Thank you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. I'm George Curtis, and I'm jealous. I'm jealous of Susan and Dick Campbell. They took a trip of a lifetime, a trip that many of you have thought about doing, but you decided, no, I couldn't do that. It's too expensive. I'm too old. I'd get tired. I wouldn't know what to do. Well, Dick Campbell, the old historian, has got that all written down. He knows exactly what it would cost you, and
we do.
And he knows he can do it. In fact, he's got a new knee to celebrate after he came back. So, Dick, you tell them how this came about from your standpoint and why they can do it.
Well, for one, you're the reason.
I see.
You've been after me for about 20 or 30 years, and going down the Wyandotte, to go drive the Alaska Highway, take a truck up to Alaska. And I always said, gee, that would be nice someday. And I kind of thought that'll never happen. And then, as Susan alluded to in her opening, the idea came about last June. And I said, well, yeah, well, let's think about it, you know. So we thought about it and then started planning, and she's gone through that very well. And it sounded doable as far as I was concerned. And my main reason for me was reconnecting with historical things up in the Alaska area, especially around two history talks that I've been giving for the last few years. 2 of the 9 talks that I have right now, following the Alaska Highway, the building of the Alaska Highway, and the Klondike Gold Rush of 1896 to 1899. And that was one of my hopes, that we could reconnect with many of those landmarks along those 2 historical events, and along with a lot of other things that Susan has alluded to.
I've had the privilege of enjoying about your first 4 presentations. You've been holding back the other 5, and I intend to have you loan them to me.
Okay.
But let's just zero in for a moment on one of them. The historical basis of the building of the Alcan Highway is certainly interesting. Let's give the folks a thumbnail of that.
Well, that came about because in World War II, the Japanese had, of course, attacked us on December 7th, 1941. And then in early 1942, they were coming in through the Aleutian Islands at Attu and Kiska. And the possibility, the thought then, was maybe they'd keep coming down through the Aleutian. And there was a need to have a road up to Fairbanks back in early 1942. They'd talked about it in earlier years, but that created a really great need to get, hey, we got to get a military highway built. And so in March of 1942, the U.S. Army and civilian contractors, over 10,000 of them, put together about 5 regiments. And in March of 42, they started building from Dawson Creek, British Columbia, and from Fairbanks, coming both ways. It wasn't just we'll start here and end here. And all these 5 different regiments had their responsibilities. And in 8 months and 12 days, they completed the military highway that you call the Alcan, or as we call more so today, the Alaska Highway, in 8 months and 12 days. Good for military travel. It wasn't real good for you and me to go up and down. But it was a need. It was because of the need to get supplies up to. Also, there was air bases along the way, and we were sending planes up to Fairbanks, and then Russian pilots were coming over and flying them over into the Soviet Union in their war effort against Germany in 42 and 43.
And right now, if you drive that highway, you will see remnants of the original highway.
Yep.
You can stop along the way and buy books that show pictures of these people who came up there to build the highway, who slept in tents in 60 below weather.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Unbelievable what they went through.
That's one of 200 reasons to take the trip you and Susan took.
Well,
but tell us a little bit about the history of the gold mining that you referred to.
Well, the Klondike Gold Rush came about back in 1896, on August 16, 1896, when some miners up in Yukon Territory came across some gold nuggets in a stream, as they say, on August 16, 1896. And that was really the start of the Klondike Gold Rush. And the nation was in a recession at that time of 1893. And the word got out that there was gold up in the Yukon. And the world started going to the Klondike. Over 100,000 people supposedly set off from all around the world for the Klondike. They had no idea where it was, and about 30,000 of them made it, and about 4,000 made some money with gold. But the goal was Dawson City, Yukon Territory.
Sure.
And that's where the Klondike River connects with the Yukon River. and that's where they had there's about a 60-mile round trip around that area where all various placings from gold were found.
For a historian like
Yeah.
Dick Campbell, this trip had to be a feast with
It really
some of
was.
the things you were doing. Besides, I know you wanted to spend that kind of time with Susan, who's become a real Alaskan,
Yeah, she,
and you and I are fictional Alaskan.
she really is. You're right, George.
That just had to be the experience of a lifetime for the two of you.
It really was. And that Klondike thing, we actually were at the creek supposedly where the gold was discovered, and I never thought I'd get to someplace like that.
What are your favorite memories of this trip?
Number one, driving the Alaska Highway. That's something I was on my bucket list for a long, long time, and getting the opportunity to do that, and never think I'd ever really have that opportunity. And then the historical events along the way, the White Pass and Yukon Railroad trip out of Skagway up into the Klondike area on the way to White Horse, built in 1899. We rode that. That was a highlight. Like things like along the Alaska Highway, finding where the final section was cut and monument along the road, a monument there that completed the thing after 8 months. We stopped at places like that. But a lot of highlights. And just the interesting places we stayed at along the way. Cabins, one cabin, and I think it was one of my favorites, the Testa River in the Yukon Territory, I believe. Lights went out, or the power went out at 10 p.m. and didn't come back on until 8 a.m. and it was very basic. And then we stayed in some nice motels also, but interesting places along the way that we had a chance to see.
Well, Dick, you and I have known each other a long time.
Mm-hmm.
People who knew us 25 years ago when we were athletic forces to be reckoned with at the YMCA may not recognize us today.
Right.
Now, we're pretty close to 80 years old.
Past
but
that.
I want you to take just a moment and explain to people who have thought about going to Alaska and thought their time had passed. It's too late. It isn't too late.
No, it's not. And I was a little apprehensive because I've had bad knees, and they're being taken care of. I've had this one just done 4 weeks ago, and it's going to do the other one in another month or so. But so there was a little apprehension too, that you're getting out of a car and walking a lot, but we took it gradually wherever we went. And one of the things we kept saying to each other, and especially Susan, she said, we got to go do that. And it was, if not now, when? Well, we're here now, we better do it. And like at the top of the road highway, we went to the top in a kiosk. We climbed up and stood in the kiosk and took a picture. And that's in northern territory there. And that was things like that we were able to do. Didn't run up and down mountains. But it was also one of the highlights was the start of the Chilkoot Trail, which is a significant part of the Klondike Gold Rush, out of Dyea, Alaska. And we were at the trailhead of that start, and you had to climb up about, maybe half a block or a block to get up to the start of the trailhead. And it was a little bit of a climb for me with the knees. And if not now, when? Susan said, well, I'm not going to be back here probably too soon. And I made it up to part of the little start of the Chilkoot Trail.
Well,
now she's saying, well, we got to walk the trail, which is about a 3 or 4 day trip in the summertime. We'll see about that one. But no, I'm 82 now, and it was something that I can't say I did not have a little apprehension, but we took it gradually and a little bit each day.
thank you so much for sharing that with
You're
us.
sure welcome. Thank you for having us.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Its Environment. Dick and Susan Campbell have taken us on the trip of a dream. Almost everybody's dream, and they showed that they can do it with good planning, good health, safety, good food, seeing world-class scenery, wildlife, and it didn't cost a fortune, did it?
No, it didn't. Dad kept a spreadsheet of everything, I think, on lodging and all the transportation, the ferry tickets and the train, and 21 nights in accommodation was about $2,500 total for us. And the gas, prices went up and down as we went, and there was food, but it's very reasonable. If you're, people think it's too much to go, it'll cost too much. I mean, you can save and do something like that together and have an adventure that's affordable, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's too bad you didn't think of bringing along a camera.
Oh, we took a camera, and every day my dad made a big scrapbook, and we kept a journal every night. I took a little portable photo printer, and in the hotels at night I would print photos, and we would write about each day, because we were doing something different every day, and we'd look back at what did we do tomorrow, where were we yesterday, and so we kept this daily journal with photos and wrote about the highlights of each day. And like my dad said, every day was a wow day, even when it was raining. And we had rain, but it didn't matter. It was so amazing to come upon a huge grizzly bear right in the ditch and stop the car and watch it, and lynx carrying snowshoe hare right across the road, and caribou crossing the road, and bison in BC, and bald eagles, and all kinds of waterfowl, and just right there by the road. And I think because we left Fairbanks August 25th, so we traveled the end of the tourist season and into September, and everything was still open, but nothing was crowded, and the roads were great. The whole trip, 4,000 miles of driving, was on paved roads, and construction sometimes, but no, it's awesome. It's not as intimidating as someone might think. But I would recommend that a person get the milepost, or, there's all kinds of books about driving the Alaska Highway, and you can do it. Anybody can do it.
And actually, going through what I call the Inside Passage, which isn't the correct name, and the spectacular scenery, and the wonderfully interesting cities that you can stop in, that in itself is a vacation. And it's a spectacular vacation with the people that are getting on and off when you stop at these villages, and they're real Alaskans. They have real stories to tell. What was your experience there?
Well, on the ferry, I think if you travel on the Alaska Marine Highway System, which is a state-run ferry that connects all of southeast Alaska, and it's true, it's called the Inside Passage from Skagway all the way to Bellingham, Washington. You can take the ferry, and we were on it from Skagway to Prince Rupert, and you can get off in a number of villages, and we got off in Juneau and spent a couple days there with friends. But you do see a real part of Alaska, and you don't have to be on a cruise ship, and Alaskans really want to tell the story. They love to have people, we love to have people come to Alaska, and if you appreciate the environment and being outside, and you want to see great scenery and wildlife and meet a lot of really interesting people, Alaska's a place to do it.
Well, Alaska has such fantastic variety of scenery. But Alaska, I think, is a state of the mind. You went up there 20, 30 years ago to teach for maybe a summer, to have the experience, and you never left.
Right, and many people, you'll meet Alaskans, they come for a few years and we're still there, because it's an amazing place with amazing people. And I think if you can take a trip there and really get, off of the planned tourist things, but visit some towns or the parks, the national parks and the state parks, and just feel what it's like. It is a wild and an amazing place.
And you've been back here in Wisconsin to chauffeur Dick around a little bit because he got a new knee.
He did, and on our trip, we did some walking, and Dad, I said, you know, you could get that knee replaced, and we could go hike the Chilkoot Trail, and so he is. And I think, and one of the things about Alaskans, I have lots of friends, over 80, 85, that are still out doing hikes and out in the wilderness, and it can be done. So if you think you can't, you just have to think again.
And you're on your way back in a couple of days?
I am.
In the middle of the winter of Fairbanks, and what are you looking forward to?
Well, it was minus 40 there last week. I think it's warming up, but there's great snow, there's skiing. I do winter biking, ski touring with my dog, so it's great. This time of year, especially coming into spring, is a great time to be in Alaska.
And there's no age limit.
There's no age limit. I think there is no age limit in Alaska, and every day can be a wow day there, and it really, like you said, it is a state of mind.
Well, you and Dick have introduced us to the ultimate road trip.
That's what we called it, the ultimate North American road trip, and it was a father-daughter trip, and we had an awesome time. And the more I tell my friends about it, they wish they could do it with their parents, and I just say, well, you can. Just yeah.
You're right. They can, and I'm so glad you taught us they could do that.
Thank you.
The Campbells, Dick and Susan, showed us that it is possible to have a fantastic trip through historic Alaska, beautiful Alaska, wilderness Alaska. It's even easier than that. Do you know that you can take the boat from Washington into Alaska in the Inside Passage? Do you know that there are tours that will take you in a luxurious bus through Alaska? Do you know that you could fly to one end or the other end of the Inside Passage and have a 4 or 5 day cruise, seeing some of the most beautiful scenery in the world? Do you know that Sitka and Kodiak are fantastic islands where you could have a vacation of a week or two, fly in or fly out? Do you know that you own Alaska? Do you know that you owe it to yourself to learn more about the most beautiful place in our country? And do it now. Buy the milepost. Find out what part of Alaska you want to see first. And I hope I see you there. I'm George Curtis.